habitat for the fish that live there, but also for riparian songbirds and all the wildlife that use the creek. Walker and Parker Creek, we don't want to forget about them. I thought I'd end with them because I knew you'd like these. So these are the old requirements. We had 2 minimum flows, just like the other ones. They aren't that big. CDP's not taking as much water as they used to. So here's a new requirement. Don't do it. No diversions. Not allowed. That's it. And that's part of the new stream ecosystem flow. So it's passed through in all conditions except a few emergency situations. So Walker and Parker are a straight pass through, and that's the way it's going to be for the future. Yeah, really exciting. Last thing I'll add on this, and this is part of the resilience message and how we can do it. We know things are changing, timing of stream snow melt and stream flow, as I mentioned. The new rules, the new license and these settlement conditions include flexibility so that you can make some adaptations. That doesn't mean that everyone, just a stream scientist, just gets to go in and say, well, this year I think LA doesn't get any water. That's not their job, that's the State Water Board's job. But given what you've got, maybe that peak flow should start a little earlier. Maybe it should start a little later. Maybe there's a reason to think it should last a little longer but not be quite as big, and you could make that trade-off. If the science supports that, if the stream scientists are making the case for that, then what we often hit right now is a real bureaucratic obstacle. You have to go and petition the State Water Board to make that change. You have to pay fees. You have to, you need 30, 60 days to do this kind of stuff. Everyone might look at it and go, great idea, but it's just very difficult to accomplish. The new license is going to pre-authorize that kind of adjustment, adaptive management. And it gives us, probably within the state of California, one of the most amazing abilities to be responsive to actual conditions and use some scientific input to shape the flow pattern. Especially Rush Creek, I think, will be relevant, but also Levi Creek. So there you go. That's a run through some of the things we're working on, and I'd be happy to take any questions. It's an exciting year. Yeah.
We have more.
Go out and see the streams for sure. You're looking at history happening right now.
Yeah. Time to go look at Levi Creek.
Yeah. Hi.
Do you actually have numbers for how much Mono City and Levining water use percentage relative to sure?
There are definitely numbers. I'm not sure we have last year's number, but in terms of the model and the original forecasting, yeah. And like
percentage, and we should be doing more conservation in these towns.
It's pretty small. Can I point at Maureen? Do we know?
Yeah, I don't think it's been factored into our modeling since Peter's stuff, but I think they pretty much call it even because we actually get some water out of the June utility district that wouldn't be in the Mono Basin otherwise, so I think they kind of call it a draw on most of the municipal.
Water conservation is always good, though.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't hear, but
Oh, the question was, is that
I heard the question, but I couldn't hear the answer.
the answer is it's not too big, and there may be some reasons that it's kind of a wash by the time you account for inputs in the area in terms of just the model forecasting. So probably not a big impact on Mono Lake level. At the current level, of course, I should say, but not a reason not to be water efficient in your own home for sure.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, how's everybody doing? Good. We're going to have Deanna Dulen, and then we'll take a shortish break and finish off with Kevin. So, Deanna's another Mono City resident in the house, and she actually was the first visitor center director right here in this building. That's when Deanna and I first met, back in the day. And now she's the superintendent of Devil's Post Pile. Yeah, and she came to us with this unique idea of talking about the trees of life. So, take it away.
Well, first of all, thank you to Janet, and thank you to Mono 350 and Mono Lake Committee for all the practical and inspirational work that got us to where we are today and everyone here. So So my presentation, and thank you everyone for attending, is on trees of life. And I want to dedicate this presentation to all of the forest birds, the creatures, and also to the friends of the forest birds and creatures here and now, and to the future friends. So in this presentation, we're going to take a look at trees of life, which is also forests of life, and exploring our ancient connections and dependence on forests, and our current forest conditions and the climate crisis, and solutions to support future life-sustaining forests. I might need tech support already. Oh, that's the pointer. Okay. Okay. Oh. I need a young person. Okay, thank you. Okay, our ancient connections and our dependence on forests reaches back to our primate ancestors, who spent much of their life in trees. Later, our early human societies cultivated trees for food, and the archaeological record actually shows the first cultivated plants were trees. And that extends back 12,000 years ago into the area of the Mid-East where figs were cultivated. I actually was going to do a whole program on figs, so I'll save that for next winter. Next in about the line is early grains, approximately 9,000 years ago, and then the olive tree, about 8,000 years ago. Ancient and current human connections with trees and forests span the course of our lives from cradle to grave. So cradles, baby cradles, take many forms, for example, Native American cradle boards. And we depend on trees and forests for shelter, food, and warmth, creating many shelter types from tree houses to modern wooden houses. And we also eat many nuts and fruits from trees that enrich and sustain us. And of course, wood fires warm our homes and cook our food. Also, trees pervade our lives in the death passage. Across cultures, wood is part of end-of-life rituals. For example, and this is an awesome exhibit up at the Reno Art Museum, the Aboriginal Australian culture painted memorial eucalyptus trees, and they put the bones and remains of their loved ones inside these trees, these painted trees, and return them to the forest. Funeral pyres are prevalent in many cultures, and wooden coffins placed in the earth. Trees show us the interdependence of forests and water in our living web of life. Trees use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide to oxygen, providing clean air and a breathable atmosphere, while creating food for an abundance of life. The tree canopies shelter forest soils from erosion, as many of us who have dived under trees in big Sierra Nevada thunderstorms know, by slowing the heavy rain through their leaves. And trees store water and prevent landslides by holding soils and watersheds together with the web of their roots, so kind of like the muscles of the land. No tree is an island, and each is interdependent on the forest. Treemunities is a new word I got in my research, of intertwining tree roots and fungi, forming a community of life that nourishes and protects the forests. An amazing thing I learned in the research for this presentation is forests and water are intimately connected to rainfall availability. 40% of all rainfall on land comes from forests. So how does a forest cause rainfall? So growing trees take water from the soil and release it into the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. And tree leaves act as shields, catching falling rain. And then this moisture also evaporates into the atmosphere to cause rain elsewhere. Our world's tropical and temperate forests influence climate and rainfall globally. This precipitation is recycled across continents by clouds forming above forests through the process of evapotranspiration. And that moisture is then moved by winds and deposited as rain further inland. Then the forest rain cycle begins again. So please remember to thank the forest that supplies our water needs. So forests help with water in another way. The large coastal forests actually act as biotic pumps. So low pressure air over our coastal forest actively draws water from the oceans to the land by creating winds. And this occurs primarily in the tropical and temperate rainforests. So 57% of all tropical rainforests are in Latin America, and 1/3 of the world's rainforests are in Brazil, and 25% in Southeast Asia and Pacific Islands, which we'll see how that's important later on when we talk about palm oil, and in West Africa. In temperate rainforests, we have one of the largest here along the Pacific coast, from Northern California all the way up to Alaska. And then there's all our smaller temperate forests throughout the world. Now, the loss of coastal forests can have ripple effects that can trigger atmospheric and ecological changes far away. So modeling the domino effect of the recent loss of California's 100 million trees during the drought and the beetle kill and some of the fires of the past few years could actually result in hotter and drier climates in the Midwest and East Coast regions, of course impacting our breadbasket. Globally, in the last century, deforestation has destroyed 1/3 of all remaining intact natural forests around the world. And this loss is due primarily to paper and palm oil, as well as cutting forests for farming and grazing, legal and illegal logging, and development projects. What would the world look like without the world's, what would happen if we lost the world's rainforests and they were completely destroyed? A new report called Effects of Tropical Deforestation on Climate and Agriculture shows that if we lose the South American, African, and Southeast Asian tropical forests, the globe would see drastic and far-reaching changes in rainfall patterns, wreaking havoc on the breadbaskets of the US, France, China, and beyond. My husband, one down Sherpa, and I have discussed this a number of times too, about how it's already happening in some areas in the Himalayas, where they are experiencing drastic changes in the planting season for the farmers who don't rely on irrigation. And instead of having consistent growing seasons like they have for decades, they're now getting extreme droughts, and then they're getting torrential rainfalls. So that, if you look at this map, it shows deforestation in Southeast Asia, which we know is occurring at a rapid rate, is potentially impacting many farmers here and now, as it seems to be, and could get significantly worse unless we do something. So we can help to protect and expand our remaining intact forest communities to mitigate a warming climate. So we often think about carbon sequestration in forests, and that is important. But forests also play a vital role in climate mitigation by the cooling air temperatures at the local, regional, and global scales, by increasing the availability of rainfall and groundwater by affecting global rainfall patterns, and by regulating water supplies with intact watersheds that can reduce flooding and erosion. So our challenge today is to protect the healthy forests that we have and to restore the degraded forests that we have lost. And to accomplish this, we need to understand the current state of the temperate forest that we live nearby. So thank you to Dr. Connie Millar and to Nate Stevenson, who wrote this really important article that was a synthesis of many studies, and it was published in Science magazine in August 2015. And it helps to understand our current status. Although disturbances such as fire and native insects have historically contributed to the natural dynamics of forest health, now in modern times, exceptional droughts and heat waves have directly and in combination with air pollution and invasive plants contributed to wide swaths of weakened and dead forests. These forests, in combination with a warming and drying climate, create extreme wildfires with widespread loss of forests. So one of the great recommendations in this article is now is the time to take management actions that will help minimize the loss of critical forests and ecosystems. So we'll take a look at some history and some solutions. So as many of us know, the past century has been the century of the predominance of Smokey the Bear, well-intentioned to help stop the loss of forests and communities on catastrophic scales, and so the agencies became really successful at putting out fires. And so some of the unintended results of that was that by putting out those fires, we actually increased the number of trees 4 times as much as previous to fire exclusion. And there's a great book, I hope they sell it in the bookstore here, or some of the bookstores here in the Sierra Nevada, and Fire in the Sierra Nevada Forest. So I just took a picture of the cover shot, and this shows the difference of Yosemite Valley in 1899. If you look, you can see there's much more open areas and meadows. And then after nearly a century of fire exclusion, how most of the valley floor is carpeted by forest. And that's true in many of the areas of the Sierra Nevada. And I actually had a picture of Levining Canyon that showed the same thing, but I had to pull a slide because I had a few too many. Okay, western wildlands have an extreme buildup of fuels from this fire suppression, even though some years produce average precipitation, like this one. Overall, warmer and drier patterns created by climate change are intensifying the problems of beetle kill, weakening trees, and fueling megafires. Megafires, I heard this morning on a fire briefing we got, are resistant to control. Okay, so they're difficult or even possible to control, creating their own winds, weather, and lightning. They burn hotter and longer, resulting in extensive ecosystem damage. In addition, the carbon storage of the forest soil sequestration cycle is broken, as the megafires release the greenhouse gases that were contained in those trees and soils that further contribute to global warming. So this is a vicious cycle that jeopardizes our forests and affects us all with extreme weather, more wildfires, and heavier and longer periods of intense smoke. According to fire historian Stephen Pine, a forest should be renewable, but with climate change and all the other problems going with it, we could see large-scale conversion of the forest, the equivalent of clearing it. So here's some examples. In the 2014 RIM megafire, there was large-scale loss of forests until the fire hit areas of previously managed wildfires and prescribed burns that started in Yosemite in the 1970s. And this is a paper that came out after the RIM fire of the Ecological Society of America, and USDA PSW Hugh Stafford said, when the RIM fire hit the park, it encountered lands where fire had been used as a management tool, rather than immediately suppressed, and the amount and continuity of forest fuel became a limiting factor. There just wasn't enough fuel in the system to keep it going. Another example of the importance of proactive management actions was described in the vignettes of the 2015 Rough Fire, where you see the map on the bottom left is of Grant Grove and Grant Grove Village, and the work that had been done prior to the Rough Fire, in ways that the earlier fires and fuel treatments aided in fighting the Rough Fire. First of all, they provided safe locations in the burned out areas for fire operations, and they also provided anchor points for the fire crews to build out lines build lines around the fire. They made it easier to keep fire at bay when it approached previous burn areas, and in some situations they slowed, in some cases stopped, when it reached the previous burn areas. So Devil's Postpile, what did we learn from this? We learned we're in the same boat as many of our public lands agencies, and we have similar challenges, and we describe these in our State of the Park report. It is online on our website, and overall we're suffering a major decline in our landscape and ecosystem processes due to the 100 years of fire exclusion, and combined with climate change. So we also know the state of our conifer forest is declining for the same reasons. We had some great studies done, these wood cores, that showed that within the last couple hundred years, we had a history of frequent low severity fire that averaged every 14 to 18 years. And this is kind of a cool chart. We did it for the update to our fire management plan, and it shows how many lightning strikes we get in the Devil's Postpile area on average, and July is just around the corner. We get about 181 strikes. So we better be prepared. So we realized, based on all the Sierra Nevada forests and parks and our situation, that we needed to do an adaptation plan. Okay, we did have a high severity fire. You probably remember it. It was called the Rainbow Fire. It was in 1992. It was, gosh, in 2 days, I think it turned to 8,000 acres. And it was lapping at the doors of Mammoth, but it really hit Rainbow Falls. That red is the high severity area. Those of you who've been down to Rainbow Falls know that that's pretty much a scorched area. That fire was so hot that it scorched all the soils, burned almost all the trees, and it actually burned up the seed bank. So we've had a very slow recovery in that area, and our ecologist has called it a stand replacing fire. We don't know if we're going to get that forest back. So it's basically a shrubland now. So another major event that happened in 2011, the Devil's Windstorm. 12 hours of continuous wind, sometimes over 200 miles per hour, blowing from the north to the south, which is highly unusual. So they actually caught the tips of the tallest trees and blew those trees down. They almost kind of looked like railroad ties or something across the forest, but 25% of our tallest trees blew down. So that's a huge buildup of fuel in our forest. So we knew we needed to respond to these conditions and the fuel buildup. So we initiated revision to our 2005 fire management plan. That was kind of the Smokey Bear plan, which called for full suppression of all fires, and at the same time was creating a risk of megafires. So based on the expertise of many of our sister parks and forests, we realized we really needed to initiate a whole different approach. And so we did all our public scoping and outreach, and while the alternative that was selected was that we would do targeted suppression of wildfire with limited managed wildfire and monument-wide fuels treatment, including in the wilderness. So our updated plan responds to not if a fire will happen, because it's common, but with good management actions using prescribed burns and managed wildfires. Our management actions can determine when the forest will burn and at what intensity, thereby reducing the risk of a megafire, and how it'll burn. So it's a low to moderate intensity fire, which is good news for you because it's less smoke and less duration. So the Depot Landscape Matrix focuses on reducing the risk of catastrophic fire and integrates the ecological role of fires. And I just wanted to reassure all you bird lovers, I'm there with you, and we got this in our fire plan. Okay, our prescribed fires would be August 1 to April 30th to avoid disturbance to nesting birds. And if we were able to do a fire in that time frame, we would survey for nesting birds. If found, we would alter our plan by delaying, buffering, or excluding that area. So just kind of going over some of our goals, and we're very fortunate the Inyo National Forest is just a great fire team to be partners with. And so we really recognize that we're collaborating extensively with the Inyo to develop interagency strategies and to develop Reds Meadow Valley-wide wildland fire and fuels management activities. And our goal is to maintain ecosystem resilience and allow for the ecological benefits of wildfire as lands transition to natural wildfire maintenance zone, and to complete restoration projects to restore forest structure and ecosystem resilience. We know smoke is important and that we will minimize air quality impacts of fire management activities, and will consult with the air quality control boards both in the Great Basin and San Joaquin, and that we will apply the best available science and monitoring to inform and prioritize fire and fuels management. And we'll investigate the effects of fire on our potential meta-refugia. So we're really trying to integrate the future plans. So your understanding and support is needed, and I encourage you and ask you to continue learning about the importance of management actions to reduce the risk of megafires, including the roles of managed fires and prescribed burns. So looking at the big picture, what can we each do about climate change and forest loss? And we can create and act upon interdependent solutions and ensure that nature is not the forgotten solution. I went to the Global Climate Change Action Summit and saw this awesome exhibit called The Forgotten Solution. And it's like, don't let nature be the forgotten solution. And so the really profound thing that I can share with you from that exhibit is nature is 1/3 of the solution. Okay, we got transportation, agriculture, all that, but nature is 1/3 of the climate solution. And by protecting and restoring forests, producing food more sustainably, and improving land use, these natural climate solutions are affordable, scalable, and available right now. And then we can look at what each of us can do in supporting natural reforestation efforts locally, regionally, and globally. And we can conduct our own research and make informed choices when purchasing forest products. So we can ensure we're not contributing to clear cutting and unsustainable practices, including illegal logging. And of course, reduce, reuse, recycle our paper and wood products. So I came across this really inspirational restoration project in Redwoods National Park, where they are partnering with state parks, private and nonprofit, to restore 112,000 acres of degraded redwood forest. And it's called Redwoods Rising. And the three goals they have there are to remove the legacy logging roads, to restore forest health, and restore watersheds. And I just got a really big kick out of this one. This is Mill Creek in Redwoods National Park, before restoration and after. We have Mill Creek here too, so that's why I picked that one. Okay, so restoration isn't as straightforward as we might like it to be, but it's important to recognize that we need to use the best available science when considering what type of restoration we're going to do. Are we going to restore it to what we've lost, to the past conditions, or are we going to adapt it to the current and future conditions of warming and drying, where different types of trees might be better selected to be adapted to that future forest, so that we can continue having the ecosystem services and also the biodiversity in those functional forests. So a big question agencies are grappling with, particularly Park Service and our policies, but we're grappling with it. We don't have the answer yet. Another interesting thing I learned in the research for this program is, according to the USDA Forest Forensic Lab, which is located in Portland, Oregon, illegal logging is the 3rd highest transnational crime. $20 billion of illegal wood comes into the US every year. So we don't even know it. I mean, I bought stuff from World Market, Pier 1, I thought it was really beautiful wood. Now I'm like, uh-oh, what did I buy? Okay, so it's really important to become an informed and conscientious consumer and help stop illegal logging. So just simple searches on the internet, there's all kinds of wood guide resources, the top 10 dirty woods, the Forest Stewardship Council certification, all kinds of great resources to help not be part of this really devastating illegal logging going on. Okay, so palm oil is one of the big ones. Okay, what's the problem with palm oil? Now, it comes in just about everything. Once you start looking at the labels, it's in your food, your soap, cosmetics, and even biofuels. So please read the labels. Now, here's a picture of this. I think this is in Borneo. This is some of the illegal logging and clearing for palm oil plantations. And these plantations have doubled in the last decade, resulting in extensive clearing of rainforests in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Borneo that are destroying habitat, and also, I heard, are 25% of some of the greenhouse gases in our atmosphere now. I don't know the statistics, they're all over the place, but it's a really significant impact. But the Girl Scouts to the rescue. Okay. 2 Girl Scouts in the Midwest read the labels on the Girl Scout cookies and discovered the link to palm oil destruction. Okay, so I love this one. Protecting rainforests one thin mint at a time, which, darn it, that was my favorite one too. So it was the thin mints versus orangutan survival, and Girl Scouts facing the moral dilemma. Okay, the orangutans there in the Borneo forest. So they, in their exhibit, if you see the picture, this is Rhiannon and Madison. And so I was a Girl Scout, I was a Brownie, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool, the Girl Scouts really did something. So the mission of the Girl Scouts is they build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. And that's what Rhiannon and Madison did. So they went to the Girl Scouts, the other Girl Scouts, they went to the Girl Scout headquarters. They didn't get a lot of traction for a while, but then they started getting a lot of big partners, and Rainforest Action Network, Jane Goodall, and finally the Girl Scouts kind of came around. And I say that, you know, it was an uphill climb for them, but now on some Girl Scout cookie boxes, you can see the green palm logo on the box that shows it's sustainably sourced, or if they didn't, then they bought sustainably sourced credits. So they're making progress, and we still have a ways to go, but very inspirational. Go Girl Scouts. Okay. Boy Scouts too. I'm sure they do awesome stuff too. The Girl Scout cookie thing, I sold so many Thin Mints when I was a kid, so anyway, that one hit kind of struck home. Okay, so solutions we can easily do here, each of us, is plant a tree in the southwest corner of your yard for natural air conditioning. I actually read this in the Chicago Guide to Reducing Climate Change Impacts and Reducing Your Air Conditioning Bill. I thought it was really cool. So it does create, you know, shade and cooling of climate, and also happiness for you and other creatures. Then we know this, but these are some pretty interesting statistics. So for every ton of paper recycled, it uses 50% less water, 64% less energy, and 74% less air pollution. Saves 17 trees. And this was kind of startling. 42% of all felled trees are used for paper production. And 71% of paper is made from tree timber. So what if those forests became naturally intact forests? So what is the future of forests? It's up to you. We need forests, and forests need us. The future of trees and forests is intertwined with the web of life and water, just as we are. Even in the 21st century, humans are dependent on healthy forests for clean air, clean water, mitigation of global warming, and health in all forms. The future of intact forests locally, regionally, and globally is influenced by our attitudes and the actions we take today. And what trees can teach us. When we're walking in a forest, trees can teach us the value of tree time as we listen to the sounds and songs of the forest. Trees can teach us about the beauty and balance of nature so we can find the solutions we're seeking. Trees can teach us to create a life-sustaining future for the forest, for the community of humans, and for all creatures of the forest. And just so you know, the forests are with us. We send their appreciation. Okay, thank you.
If you have any questions for Deanna, why don't you come up during the break, because I think I can sense everybody's been sitting for long enough. So let's take 10-15 minutes, and we'll have our final speaker, Kevin, on the pit cupfish when we come back.